So I've been hearing this thing about racism being a mental illness. Huh? What? Who? Child. Hey YouTube world, welcome to my channel. If this is your very first time, welcome. If you are returning, the most heartfelt thank you for your support of my channel. Today is Mental Wellness Monday. So we talk about all things mental health, and we are going to start with a bang, okay? So I've been hearing this thing about racism being a mental illness. I can't even process that, but you know what? Let's get into the real definition of what a mental illness is. So the definition of mental health, should I say, mental health, not necessarily mental illness. Mental health is someone's state of emotional well-being. It is a subjective feeling of contentment and life satisfaction despite the problems, challenges, and upheavals of life, right? So this is mental health. So every single person has mental health. You can be mentally healthy or mentally unhealthy. And this is kind of the same regard as physical health, where you can be physically healthy and physically unhealthy, right? And there's a difference between this and having an actual physical illness. And that's the same as mental illness. So you can be physically unhealthy where your body fat may be high. You may be eating a lot of unhealthy foods. And so physically, like when you take your test, they're telling you, okay, you need to switch this. You need to change that. You need to stop eating this, stop eating that, eat more of that. But at that point, you're not ill. You don't have any diseases. You're predisposed to having the diseases, but you just don't have the diseases as of yet. And that's the same with mental health. So we all have mental health. You may be mentally healthy or mentally unhealthy, but you may not necessarily have a mental illness yet, right? If you're on the mentally unhealthy spectrum. So now let's talk about the illness itself, right? So the fundamental difference between mental health and mental illness is that, again, everyone has mental health. But with the illness, this is when your symptoms become a part of your life, right? When you can't handle certain stressful situations and those symptoms have just become a part of you and they're preventing you from actually living your life like you used to when you were healthy, that's when you have an illness, right? Yeah. So that's when you have an illness. So it's really a spectrum. So let's go back to this question of racism being a mental illness. No. Okay? Yeah. No. Racism is not a mental illness. When racism sits in you for so long, it could exhibit certain traits that will lead you to mental illnesses, but racism in itself is not a mental illness. Again, you think about it as a spectrum. Racism is a form of mental unhealthiness, right? An unhealthy habit that you have. That's racism. Because when you think of racism, it comes with you trying to avoid this certain race because of whatever negative ideologies that you have of them, because racism in itself is not a positive thing. So you have these negative ideologies of these this type of race, and you've internalized it. So you've internalized it, and in turn, it's showing up with these traits of paranoia, of anxiety when you're around them, or whatever it may be. So it's leading, this unhealthiness is leading you to an illness. But racism in itself is not an illness, because racism is taught, right? It's taught. You either are taught consciously, someone is really feeding this thing into you, or you're taught by maybe things that you hear around you and you've just internalized it. So yeah, no, racism is not an illness, and I'm just gonna end it there because I had to just drop my 2 cents, just drop a little bit of my 2 cents in here, and just kind of like, no, for people who really actually have absolute mental illness, like people who struggle with anxiety like I do, people who struggle with ADHD, people who struggle with actual mental illness, psychosis, and like some of these other like serious mental illness. I think it's just, no, we're not gonna belittle, just mental illness by saying that racism, which is a discrimination against someone because of their race, is a mental illness. No, because we're not born with the idea of racism, and your brain doesn't just concoct an idea of racism. You have to be indoctrinated with the idea of someone being lesser than you. Yes, we have narcissists, and that's a whole different situation. But narcissism does not affect just one sector of people, or it does not affect just one color. No, it doesn't. Narcissism affects every single person who has certain components of experiences. So no, we not doing this, okay? No. And yeah, that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed the segment, and if you did, thumbs it up, subscribe, share if you haven't subscribed already. Subscribe and share the video so that we can spread our family and keep growing. Yeah, because that's what we want to do, right? Yeah. So thank you all for listening, and I hope you check out my other videos on my channel. All right, have a good one. Bye.